Good evening. Settle in, get comfortable, and let your eyes rest whenever they're ready to. Tonight I want to take you to a beach in South Australia. It's the 1st of December 1948. The sun is warm, the water is calm, and a jeweler named John Lyons is out for an evening walk with his wife. Nothing about the evening feels unusual. People are strolling. The tide is coming in slowly, and a little further down the sand, propped against the seawall, there's a man sitting there, well dressed, legs crossed. He looks like he might just be watching the water, the way you or I might, on a quiet evening with nowhere else to be. Mr. Lyons doesn't think much of him at first. People fall asleep on beaches all the time. But something about the man's stillness stays with him. He mentions it to his wife. They keep walking. The next morning, that same man is found in the same spot. He hasn't moved at all. And he's dead. This is the beginning of a case that would occupy investigators, code breakers, and amateur researchers for more than 70 years. It has no jump scares in it, no violence to speak of. It's a quiet mystery, and it stayed quiet for a very long time. So let's walk through it slowly, the way it actually unfolded. When police arrive at Somerton Beach that morning, the man looks almost peaceful. He's in his 40s, they guess, athletic build, well-groomed, dressed in a smart coat despite the mild weather. There's no wallet, no identification, no wound, no blood, nothing that looks like a struggle. In his pockets, they find an unusual assortment of small things: a used bus ticket, a comb, chewing gum, a pack of cigarettes with a different, more expensive brand tucked inside it. Nothing that tells them who he is. Every label has been removed from his clothing, not torn out carelessly, but carefully, deliberately cut away, as though someone didn't want this man identified by his laundry tag. That detail alone is enough to make the local detectives uneasy. The autopsy doesn't offer much comfort either. His organs show some signs of possible poisoning, but toxicology testing at the time can't identify any known poison in his system. His heart looks enlarged. His spleen is unusually large, too. The pathologist notes his calf muscles are extremely well developed, the kind of muscle definition you'd associate with a dancer, or someone who does a great deal of walking or climbing. 3 doctors examine the case. All 3 agree on one thing: whatever killed this man, it likely wasn't natural, and none of them can say for certain what it actually was. He is fingerprinted. His photograph and fingerprints are circulated across Australia and eventually overseas. Nobody claims him. Nobody reports him missing. A man in his prime, well-dressed, physically fit, simply doesn't seem to exist anywhere in anyone's records. They begin to just call him, quietly, the Somerton Man. About a month later, in January of 1949, someone at Adelaide Railway Station notices an unclaimed brown suitcase sitting in the cloakroom. Records show it was checked in on the evening of November the 30th, the night before the man was found. Inside, there's a fairly ordinary set of belongings: a dressing gown, slippers, a shirt, a pair of trousers with an unusual stitching pattern, orange thread, repaired by hand. There's a stenciling kit, the sort used by a ship's crew to mark cargo, and a table knife that's been cut down and sharpened, its handle removed. Almost every tag has again been removed from the clothing, except for a few items that carry the name T. Keane, or slight variations of it. Investigators try to track down a T. Keane. They can't find one, anywhere, who fits. A tailor is brought in to look at the suit the man was wearing when he died. He tells police the stitching technique, the cut, isn't Australian. It looks American-made. If this man traveled internationally and did so carrying almost nothing that could identify him and appeared to be deliberately erasing his own trail, the picture starts to feel less like an accident and more like intention. But intention toward what? Nobody yet knows. Here's where the case takes its strangest turn and also gives us its name. In May of 1949, months after the body was found, a pathologist re-examining the dead man's trousers discovers something previous searches had missed. A small pocket, sewn into the waistband, almost invisible, holding a tightly rolled scrap of paper. On it, 2 printed words, Tamam Shud. It's Persian, and it translates roughly to "it is ended" or "it is finished." It's traced back to the final page of a specific book, the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, a centuries-old collection of Persian poetry about living fully and accepting death without regret. Police put out a public appeal. Somewhere, they reason, there is a copy of this exact book missing its final page. A man comes forward. He'd found a copy of the Rubaiyat in the back seat of his unlocked car, parked in Glenelg, not far from Somerton Beach, on the very night the man is believed to have died. Police compare the torn edge of the scrap from the man's pocket to the missing page in this book. It matches, precisely, down to the fibers. And on the very back page of that book, faintly written in pencil, are 5 short lines of capital letters. No spaces. No obvious pattern. The exact transcription has been debated for decades because the handwriting is faint and some letters could be read more than one way. Cryptographers from Australian intelligence look at it. Naval intelligence looks at it. Amateur code breakers around the world have looked at it ever since. Nobody to this day has definitively cracked what it means, if it means anything at all. We'll come back to it. For now, just sit with the idea of it. A man with no name, no history anyone can find, carrying a torn scrap from a poem about endings, with a private code written in the back of the very same book. There's one more detail written in that same book, and it's the one that gives the case its most human thread. Very faintly, also in pencil, is a local telephone number. Police trace it to a young nurse living in the beachside suburb of Glenelg, just a short walk from where the body was found. Her name is Jessica Thompson, though friends know her by the nickname Jestyn. When police visit her, she tells them she has no idea who the dead man might be. She's shown a plaster cast made of his face. According to the officer present, she goes pale, almost faints, and then insists again that she doesn't recognize him. Jessica mentions that a few years earlier during the war, she'd given a copy of that same book as a gift to a man she'd briefly been involved with, an army lieutenant named Alf Boxall. Police track Boxall down. He's alive, in Sydney, and remarkably, still has his own copy of the book, completely intact, with its final page still in place. For decades, Jessica maintains she never knew the Somerton man. She dies in 2007. It isn't until a television interview years later that her daughter Kate comes forward and says something quite different. That her mother had, in fact, known far more than she'd ever admitted to police and had kept that secret for the rest of her life. We don't get to know what that secret was. Jessica took it with her. For more than 70 years, this case sat unresolved, and in that time, almost every kind of theory attached itself to it. Some believed he was a spy, caught in the earliest tension of the Cold War. Adelaide, at the time, sat close to a sensitive weapons testing site, which only added fuel to that idea. Others believed it was heartbreak, in its most literal sense, a private tragedy dressed up in the theatrics of espionage, because the truth felt too plain to satisfy anyone. Some looked at his calf muscles and imagined a dancer hiding from a life he no longer wanted. Every theory offered a different kind of ending. None of them could be proven. In 2022, that finally changed. A University of Adelaide researcher named Derek Abbott had spent decades on this case. Working with a genetic genealogist, he used DNA recovered from hair samples preserved in the plaster death mask made back in 1948 and traced it through public genealogy records. The DNA pointed to a man named Carl Webb, Charles Webb, to those who knew him, an electrical engineer and instrument maker from Melbourne, born in 1905. Records show he'd separated from his wife not long before his death and had essentially disappeared from any official paperwork sometime around 1947. There's no confirmed record of him ever meeting Jessica Thompson. No confirmed link to espionage. What emerges instead is a much quieter picture. A man going through a private unraveling, far from home, carrying almost nothing that could trace him back to the life he'd left behind. So that's where the story rests, for now. A man who spent 7 decades as a mystery turns out to have simply been Carl. Someone's son, someone who once had a job, a marriage, an ordinary life, before all of it quietly came apart. The code in the back of that book still hasn't been solved. Maybe it never will be. Some stories don't close as neatly as we'd like them to, and Tamam Shud, it is ended, might be the most fitting phrase this case could have carried after all. Thank you for spending this time with me tonight. Rest well, and I'll see you in the next one.